Hey, what's up, guys? I hope you're enjoying the Be the Difference podcast. If you are, I got a huge favor to ask. Go on to Apple Podcasts, leave a 5-star review for us. It helps us immensely with algorithms and growth because we grow completely by word of mouth, organically. That's why there are no ads. Also, feel free to share this content with somebody you think might get value out of it. Last, if you don't know, I also do coaching to help people become the best version of themselves, starting with physical fitness, going all the way through mindset, sales, and leadership. If you're interested in learning more, there's going to be a link in the description of the podcast. You can schedule a time. It's a free assessment. All I'm going to do is have a conversation with you and see if I can even help you. I look forward to speaking to all of you. Continue to enjoy the podcast, and remember to always be the difference. What's up, everybody? It's Greg with Delta, and this is the Be the Difference podcast. This podcast is all about making you a better person in your life and in your business with coaching on sales, leadership, mindset, marketing, everything under the sun when it comes to being an entrepreneur, and we bring on guest speakers. Today, I've got the honor and pleasure of welcoming Dr. Michelle Gordon. Dr. Gordon, how are you?
I'm good. I'm really good. It's starting to get springy here.
Where are you located at?
I'm in New York.
Oh, okay. Yeah. We're in Texas. So it's actually going the opposite direction for us.
Where in Texas?
The Dallas area.
Oh,
So right
okay.
now it's like cold here. So
Yeah.
it will cold for us. It was
Well,
like 30 degrees this morning. I think it's 50 right now, but it's 50 and like super windy with a cold chill. So, but it was in the 70s like last week, so it's just like it's all over.
Oh, yeah, that's frustrating. I mean, global warming is real, and we can't like understand our weather patterns anymore, I don't think.
Yeah, it's been crazy, to be honest.
Yeah.
So for those of you that don't know Dr. Michelle Gordon, let me go ahead and introduce her. So she ran a multi-million-dollar surgical practice from 2005 to 2020 and grew it to 5 surgeons. All the overnight ER calls, sleepless nights, corporate medicine's lack of empathy for doctors, and generalized discontent with medicine led to severe overwhelm and burnout. Her life as she knew it was no longer sustainable. And then COVID happened. Working in medicine became more challenging and dangerous for her family and for herself, and simply entering the hospital became complicated. She closed her successful practice to recover, and as she healed, she learned it was possible to bounce back quickly without suffering when you have access to the right tools. In overcoming her burnout, she focused on brain science and behavioral change, particularly habit change with minor incremental improvements and how behavior drives outcomes. Launch Your Life is a community of professionals working toward their ideal life, one habit at a time. And as a result, the community members often have vast life improvements in as little as 4 weeks. She can't wait to be a guest, and she's excited to share her information here with us today. I think this is going to be an amazing podcast. I'm excited to hear more about your community, Launch Your Life.
Yeah.
Dr. Gordon, let's jump in.
Okay, let's do it.
So tell us a little bit about how this all started. I mean, obviously you had a very successful practice. What was going through your mind when you closed that?
It was really interesting. I celebrated a lot of financial success, but I wasn't happy, and I didn't understand why I wasn't happy. And what happened for me was I started having suicidal thoughts, and that's never healthy. And we don't often, like, when we start to have the suicidal thoughts, oftentimes, we don't seek help. And I looked at it and I said, well, there's something wrong with my life. If I'm thinking about suicide, then there's something wrong. And I looked back at my career in surgery and realized that the whole thing was a fight uphill. And I just didn't want to do it anymore. And that was when I started making a plan to get out. And that was even maybe just before COVID. But what really happened before COVID was one of my surgeons actually died by suicide. And after I had those thoughts and then he died by suicide, I was like, oh, okay, nothing's worth this. My life is not. And I had to make some changes, and that's what I did.
That's powerful. And
Yeah.
you know, I'm glad that you're sharing this, to be honest. Thank you for sharing this, very vulnerable of you. Um, a lot of times people feel when they're at a position in life, they're like, well, everything's going to get better when I get to here, when I make
Oh,
more
yeah.
money, when I have more success, like it's going to get better. But what you don't realize is that you have to bring you with you,
Yeah,
right?
wherever you go, there you are.
Wherever you go, you know, that those internal feelings are going to come
Yeah,
with you.
yeah.
Money's not going to take those feelings away, of those feelings of anxiety, of depression. Um, you know, money isn't a cure all. No, no, money doesn't buy happiness. It can make you a better person. It allows you to do things.
I think money solves money problems,
Yeah,
but,
absolutely.
it's just gonna make you more of who you are, and, unless, if you come upon, a lot of money right away and you haven't decided how to deal with it, then you're gonna spend all that money and it's gonna go, right?
Yeah.
So, that's why lottery winners, most of them spend all their money and go back to living, on 50, $60,000 a year because they haven't changed who they're being.
Mhm. And it has a lot to do with habits, so small habits
It does, but
that
it's
you
not
talk about
just
with.
small habits. I mean, the way you change your state of being is to decide who you're gonna be. I mean, you're gonna decide that,
Mhm.
and then you have to actually take action toward it. Yeah, it's like the talented Mr. Ripley, but on the positive side.
Yeah. You know, that's the point you're making about, like, you have to decide who you're going to be.
Yeah.
It's actually listening to a podcast. I listen to Alex Hormozy all the time. Shout
Oh,
out to
good
Alex
guy.
Hormozy, the game. I love that podcast.
Yeah.
And he was talking literally about this concept of, like, you know, he talked about it for weight loss, just as in a simple context,
Mhm.
in fitness. Because the man he was talking to, he was a guest on our podcast, and the guy was saying, you know, how do I lose weight? And he was like, well, let me ask you, like, it's really, it's not about so much the habit change. It's just you just decide to be a healthier person. Like, you have
Yeah.
to live that, and then is there going to be a grind, and, like, every single time that you go to eat something, like, hey, is this something a healthy person would do? And over time, that just becomes natural and normal for you. And he said, you know, a lot of people will say, you know, I don't know how to stop eating, or, like, always binge. When I just start binging. He's like, well, then why aren't you 200 pounds heavier? Right. And it's like, well, because I can't eat that much. He's like, so then you do know how to stop.
Yeah.
You
Well,
just
it's
you
just
just
really good. Yeah.
haven't made that, you haven't decided who you want to be. It has nothing to do with you don't have to stop. It has to do with the who you're deciding to be and what you show up to every single day.
Yeah. And that's discipline.
Mhm,
And discipline can feel like not very happy in the moment sometimes.
mhm,
And so we have to really bring in that future self, and we have to make that future self part of who we are right now in order to make choices for it. And the reason why we don't is because a a moment of pleasure is usually we usually prefer that over the future kind of thing that's out, because that we don't identify with that. We don't identify with our future self. And I used to talk about catching up with my future self a lot, and getting to where I know I can be, right? And that's just habits in the moment. That's just decisions in the moment. Like, am I going to drink? No, I'm not going to drink today. Or I'm not going to drink right now if it's presented to me. I don't drink because I don't like how it makes me feel. But it took me a long time to get there. Like, I kept drinking, right?
mhm.
And I didn't understand, because it was really an easy decision for me when it came to marijuana. I hate how marijuana makes me feel. Very easy for me to say no anytime I'm around it. No, I don't like it. It makes me paranoid. I have to go to bed until it wears off. I hate it, right?
Yeah.
So alcohol was similar, but in the moment and the several moments after drinking, like, I felt happier, or I felt, like I was more fun or whatever. It wasn't until hours later, or when my sleep was disrupted, I was like, ah, shit, why did I do this? And so now it's like I have to remind myself that when I drink, not only do I say stupid things, but I'm going to feel crappy, and I don't want to feel crappy. And
Mm.
so it's really easy for me to not drink, even though I have, a really nice wine collection. I just don't drink anymore. I haven't had a drink, I think, since the end of December, and even then I only had like one.
Yeah, isn't it weird, or like it's very transformational when you remove alcohol from your life and you see the benefits. It actually gets a lot easier to not drink when you get in
Yeah.
social situations. I don't drink anymore either. I used to drink quite a bit. I had problems with suicidal ideations
Yeah.
and depression, and during those time frames,
Mhm.
I was always drinking heavily.
Yeah, well, that's I mean, COVID, I mean, we had a really, really huge uptick in the amount of alcohol consumption in our country during COVID, during the lockdown. And because people were so like isolated and bored, and I think we had an increase in suicide, but I don't know. I don't have the statistics in front of me, but I don't think it's so unusual to have suicidal ideation, and maybe I say that because I've had it, right?
Mm,
But I've talked to several people who have. I think the main thing is to not be afraid to talk about it, not be afraid to talk about mental health. I mean, burnout is real.
mm.
And if I had had a mentor who I could talk to, I might still be in medicine now, but I can't, like, I'm not, there's no way I'm going back to that.
Yeah. So that's a massive transition. That was probably scary to make that decision. Talk about that first initial stages of when you started pulling out. What was
Yeah.
that like? You know, emotionally, mentally, the challenges you went through, financially.
Yeah. So thankfully, I made a lot of money. And so like while I'm not, I mean, I need to make more money again. I'm not hurting, right?
Yeah.
So I have a lot of privilege that way. If I had to live off of my online business, I would be in the street or living in my car. So that's it. Starting a business is hard. It's a lot harder than I thought it would be. And um, I had some initial really big success. I had started with the menopause space and trying to help women understand menopause. And as I went through it, I realized that, yeah, I mean, I can help women in menopause, but I don't really, I'm not a housewife. And I kept attracting women who wanted to complain about menopause and talk about, that and who are mostly housewives. And that's not, I mean, I'm a surgeon, right? And so it's a very different world. And so I thought, well, maybe there's a way that I can still serve them without having to coach them. And so we've got a menopause course that's coming up on the Dr. Michelle Gordon website that'll be standalone and you can go and buy it if you want to understand how to navigate menopause. But what I had done was I had built this community and I had a live launch. It was the middle of the pandemic. I mean, it was early in the pandemic. It was like April or May. And I made like 30K. And I thought, okay, well, if I do this 4 or 5 times a year, I'll be okay. I can do that. And then it just didn't continue to work. And I didn't understand marketing. And I think the misunderstanding when it comes to building online business, especially if you're an expert in some other field, is that you can just put your name out there and somebody will buy from you. There's a lot more to it than that.
Mm.
And
There is a lot, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
I
And
know.
and there's a lot of people out there who will take your money, but won't actually do anything for you. At least that was my experience. And as somebody who has utilized specialists my whole life, what happened for me was, I'd hire people to help me market, and then they wouldn't sell, and I didn't have the skill set to understand how to talk to them. And so it was just this recurring kind of like not it was just a waste of money more
Mhm.
than anything else. And so my focus over the last year has been marketing, like really studying the greats like Eugene Schwartz and Ogilvy
Mm.
so that I can truly understand how to get people to, so I can communicate my message. It isn't that I'm trying to manipulate people. I just need to understand what it takes to make things work.
To influence
Hopkins.
at a
Yeah.
higher level.
Yeah, it's more than just influence. I mean, the book by Cialdini is great, and that helps you like with the sales page, right?
Mhm.
But that there's more to it than that. Like, how do you write a compelling headline? And how do you get people to continue to read from the next thing to the next thing, or continue to watch from the next thing to the next thing? And that takes skill and practice. And I think that's why we write. That's why we go on Twitter. That's why we do stuff.
Yeah.
as marketing.
Have you read anything from Seth Godin?
I've read, Start with Why. And is that
Oh,
Seth? Oh no,
it's
Seth Godin, Purple Cow.
Purple Cow, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, I've read some of his stuff. I mean, he's great. I've worked with Louis Grenier, who's got a podcast called Everyone Hates Marketers. So I've learned a lot of marketing over the
Yeah.
past, and that's why I shifted, was actually because I worked with Louis Grenier and I realized that menopause wasn't it for me. And so I niched down really, 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 really small.
Yeah.
And so now I went from general surgeon to soul surgeon, and I help surgeons create a life they love.
Nice. I
So
love it.
it's super, super niche.
So talk about your Launch Your Life platform and program.
Yeah. So Launch Your Life is a community where I take you through. There's like an 8 to 12 week program, and I take you through the fundamentals of how to not hate your life. And it's just exactly what I did. Trying to understand how to manage your thoughts, what's your mental models, and how to maybe change your reality,
Mhm.
right? What your legacy is, how to turn something that feels bad into something that's good. So it's really that kind of thing. That's what it's all about. It's really about creating the models in your life so that you can be who you need to be to create a life you love. Start with being.
Just to kind of caveat off of this, so I'm almost done with The Power of Now.
Great book.
Oh, so good,
Yeah.
right? So good. By
But
Eckhart
there's no
Tolle.
frameworks.
No,
It's just like,
there really isn't. There really
yeah,
isn't.
I know. You can't. I mean, there's no way to get a framework off of reading Eckhart Tolle. It's just like truth bomb after truth bomb after truth bomb.
It's so good.
Yeah.
And one of the things that he says in the book that is very profound. It's basically like your current situation just is.
Yeah.
It's not a negative or positive. It's just the way that it is, and it's based off of everything that's happened. So if you just have and too often we'll put this this attach a feeling to how things are, like a negative or a positive
Yeah.
feeling. And what he does is he breaks it down like how that can basically spiral and cause it to get out of control. Where if you just accept that's okay, that this is this way, and I
Mhm.
you want to go and you live in the now, you can attract something else that you want based on your acceptance of it, and you can actually create a platform or a life that you want based off of that. And so
Yeah.
it's just, I wanted to kind of caveat off of that because it really reminded me of The Power Now, some of the things that I'm learning from that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's really important to remember that things happen, and the things that happen, they don't care how you feel. They're
Yeah.
just things, right? And there's a parable about the good thing, bad thing, who knows? Have you heard that one?
No.
So there's a farmer
I
and
do know that parable.
yes, yes,
Yes, actually I do. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But go ahead, tell
yes,
it. It's great. This
yeah.
is a great
So there's
parable.
a farmer, and the farmer has a beautiful horse, and everybody says, "Oh, what a beautiful horse!" And he says, "Good thing, bad thing, who knows?" The horse runs off, and people say, "Oh, that's so horrible. The horse has run off." He says, "Good thing, bad thing, who knows?" Horse comes back with 8 friends. They say, "Oh, you're so lucky. What now you get it's good thing, bad thing, who knows?" So then the army comes through and they start conscripting young men. And just before that, the man's son fell off one of the horses and broke his leg. And
Mhm.
at the time, everyone's saying, "Oh, that's so sad, your son." And he's like, "Good thing, bad thing, who knows?" And then because he was lame, he didn't get conscripted. And they're like, "Oh yeah, great job, great. You're so lucky. He didn't have to go to the war." And he's like, "Good thing, bad thing, who knows?" And it just goes on and on like that. And it really is an exercise in understanding that these things happen, and it's when we start to assign meaning and stories to them that we start to suffer.
Mhm.
And we can just let it be a neutral event. And it's hard because of our emotions. It's really hard. We have emotions. We're attached to people. When my surgeon killed himself, it was really hard. That was awful,
Mhm.
right? But my first question, well, after I kind of got over the initial shock, was what is the opportunity in this? How can I, you know, do things? And for me, I realized that I didn't want to live like this. I wanted to sleep at night. I'm tired of taking call. And so it was in, I think, November of 2019 that he died, and by July of 2020 I was done. And
So
COVID was, I'm in New York. We had the first wave. You guys over there in March of 2020 didn't think it was real, right? And I was on Facebook telling people that this is horrible and it's coming for you. And I had colleagues saying, "Oh, it's not that virulent." And I said, this is bad. Nobody's surviving. And so it was demoralizing. I'd come home and I'd strip down to my underwear and run and take a shower and try and, it was, and then they wouldn't let us, like they policed how we got into the hospital and took away our autonomy. It was awful.
yeah,
Yeah, it was
and
hard.
I'm sure that also increased the stress of the burnout, and probably exponentially even during that time frame.
Yeah, I mean, and I was one of the only like independent practices that wasn't working for the corporation. And there I had some active meddling by the corporation trying to interfere in the contracts I had with
Mhm.
people who were working for me. And it's really interesting to think that because they have so much money and so much power that they can really meddle in that way. And that was frustrating.
I want to get your take on burnout. Why do you
Okay.
think, and your perspective will be obviously from the medical side, and,
Yeah.
and you're running that business. What are some factors that I think are key indicators of when people are starting to get burnout and things that are happening to them in their life?
Well, in the first sign of burnout, especially in the medical field, and this can go to any caring field, is lack of empathy. So we start to lose empathy
Mm,
for patients, for other people. And for me, I had 4 surgeons working for me, and I hated leading them. I mean, I did not like leading surgeons because surgeons have big egos, right?
yeah.
And they all wanna be the boss, and they all wanna do it their way. And my answer was usually, "If you wanna do it your way, go start your own practice." Because it's what do we call it? A benevolent dictatorship when you have a business, right?
Yeah.
And so, um, I was really tired of HR and dealing with personalities. That was because surgeons have big, big, big personalities. So that was a huge source of burnout for me. Um, and then so not only is it loss of empathy, but then on top of that, it's lack of meaning, right? And so for someone like me who was tr- trying to get crushed, they were trying to crush me, the corporate side of things, because I was like a small group on my own. It was really hard to feel like I had any say, or like my voice counted.
Mhm.
And so when you start to lose meaning in your work, then it's like, I don't care. I mean, that's like the quiet quitting that we hear people talk about all the time. It's like, just go to work, do your job, and leave.
Mhm.
And just do it slow, because you're going to get paid no matter what, no matter how fast you do it, no matter how much you show initiative. Just, go and do it.
Yeah.
Right. And that to me, what quiet quitting is a form of burnout.
That's actually a good point. I've never thought about that like that. The quiet quitting aspect, but
Yeah.
also the lack of empathy.
Yeah.
When people notice the signs, what are some things that they can do that you feel that you've noticed that can help them to get out of that burnout?
Well, I think the number one thing is self care. And it's not bubble baths, which is what you hear a lot of people talking about. Go get a manicure, go get a bubble bath. It really has to do with becoming healthier, like we were talking about in the beginning.
Mhm.
How do you get healthy? You eat better food, you move your body. You don't have to have like muscles and you don't have to be all veiny, but you do have to feel good. And the way we feel good as humans is to move. That's
Mhm.
so important. And when you're feeling burned out and you're depressed and you're anxious, oftentimes it's the inertia of the couch and Netflix or some other streaming service, right? We just sit there and consume, 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 and we don't do things to better ourselves or to try and do something to get out of it because we feel like it's hopeless. So oftentimes I think that even just taking a 15-minute walk is one of the best things you can do for yourself when you're feeling really, really down, because when you move your body, emotions change.
Mm.
So there's that. I think there's also being aware of emotions, and because humans don't come with an instruction manual, and we're not taught how to recognize emotions, what they mean, what to do with them. We're taught in school how to be factory workers. And how do you get to know what your emotions mean? I mean, you have to sit with yourself. You have to understand that every answer you need is inside of yourself.
Mm.
And you have to trust yourself enough to believe that this is what I have to do. And then you've got to trust yourself enough to actually follow through and do it. So that might mean you have to break up with someone. That might mean you have to kick somebody out of your life so you can feel better. Um, and those things are hard, because once you kick somebody out, you might want them back. And then that's that whole cycle of texting your ex, right?
Yeah.
And then the third thing is boundaries. So setting strong boundaries is important, and you have to decide. There's a couple ways to do it. If you know what you don't like, then you can start to take steps to figure out what you do like, right? So if you know that you don't like how somebody talks to you at work, then you can start to take steps to say, this is not acceptable. And when you want to set a boundary for somebody else's behavior toward you, it's really important to do it in as loving and as calm a manner as possible. So it's never advisable to do it when you're in the heat of the
Mm.
moment. It's more about, how do you sit down, you decide how it is you want to be treated, and then you go back and talk to them about it, and how it made you feel. And you
Mm.
talk about it from that perspective.
Absolutely. I like to think of, and to prevent burnout for me, this is what worked for me. When I was first got an insurance and I was my 1099 self-employed
Hmm.
slash entrepreneur. Um, I spent my first like full, or actually my second full year, really just grinding and working every single day, 7 days a week, running as much business as I could, trying to hit goals. And I would have these periods of time where I'd be really successful, and then I would just like almost crash.
Yeah.
And I would have like a week where I would just be like, couldn't get, and I didn't want to do anything. And until something happened in the business that forced me to be like, oh crap, I'm slipping. And then it was like this roller coaster of like
Yeah.
going down. And then I'd be like, I got to put my foot back on the gas. And now I'm like, "Wah," and what I found was when I looked at my schedule and I looked at what was I doing on a daily basis, and how was it feeding into different aspects of my persona, my personality,
Hmm.
and my life. Everything was going towards my professional side. It was all
Yeah.
professional.
Yeah.
And so when I started looking at, okay, well, I got to have some kind of physical fitness because I like to be physically fit. Like I like working out. I like going to the gym. I like going out. I go outside. I do a workout outside every day.
Hmm.
I like doing that stuff. So I got to schedule that in. Okay. My professional side, I got to work, obviously. So I got to have that in there. I'm a very social person. I like to have conversations with people. And so I had to intentionally schedule time to reach out to someone and just have a conversation. And it didn't have to be anything work related, just catching up. Hey, how are you? Learn something from them, have a great conversation.
Yeah.
I had to have some time set aside for mental stimulation where I was reading or I was learning something. I was trying to like increase my capacity in some way, but it was an intentional focus, like just I'm focusing on my mental capacity. And then I also had to focus on my spiritual, whereas like reading scriptures, prayer, meditation,
Hmm.
search for meaning, that kind of thing. And what I found is if I did, even if it was a little bit each day, even if I had a lot of work that day, but if I filled each one of those buckets a little bit, I felt more fulfilled and less burnt out, and I could do more.
Yeah. Yeah. I think those are really important. I mean, every day at the end of the day, I write down 10 ideas. I learned this from James Altucher. Write down 10 ideas every day. Doesn't matter. You just practice your idea muscle, because that way you can always bounce back. Right. And then I rate myself on a scale of 1 to 10. Did I eat healthy? Did I move my body? Did I sleep well the night before? And, did I practice spirituality?
Mm.
So, he's got this book called Choose Yourself, and I don't know when it came out. I think it was before the pandemic, and it's basically how to really kinda pick yourself, and he's got this set of 26 things from A to Z of how to win the day. So you only have to do one of them a day, and, like, one of them is just take a shower. So when you're stuck, right, when you really feel like you're stuck, you can go to this what he calls a daily practice and do that.
Mm.
Pick one thing and do it every day.
Mm.
Um, the other book that I read that I really loved that helped me a lot back in 2018 when I started running was Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It. Have you read that book?
I have not.
Yeah, that's I think it's Naval Ravikant, but he just talks about how he started telling himself he loved himself and he started having magic in his life. I tell myself I love myself. I haven't seen the magic yet. But I will say that back in 2018 when I started running again, and it had been, I don't know, since I was 18, so back in I was probably 53, 54. Um, then when I started running, I was 18, I had open heart surgery. I'd been running a lot before my open heart surgery, and then I had this congenital defect that they had to fix, and then I stopped running afterwards. And I didn't run again until my 50s. And I started running again, and I would run and I would say, I love myself. I love myself. And it's really funny to think about it. It wasn't until I was on this running podcast was talked about, wow, I think running might have saved my life because that was around the time that I was having a lot of suicidal thoughts.
Mm.
So it's really interesting to look back at it from that perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a study, the British Sports Medicine Journal did a study on, on working out. And it was for people that were suffered mild to moderate depression, nothing, no major depression or major depression disorders. And they had three different test groups. One test group, they gave medication, they gave antidepressants.
Yeah.
Second test group, they gave antidepressants and had them work out. And the third test group, they just had workout. And what they found, the study showed that there was no difference in the three test groups for who was able to the percentage of people that were able to overcome their depression.
Hmm.
Now, what they did is where the study gets interesting is like the 6 or month mark, I think the year mark, they went back and they looked at those people that were able to overcome the depression and who relapsed, and the percentage of people that relapsed back in depression in that time frame. And for the first test group of just antidepressants, is like 38%
Hmm.
people relapsed back in depression of everyone that was able to overcome. Second test group was not much different. It was like 32%. The third test group that just did working out, it was like 8%.
Yeah, I think that we forget that exercise is the best antidepressant.
Yeah.
I mean, not only do we get feel good chemicals, oxytocin and serotonin and dopamine, right? But we get morphine. We get the body's morphine when we, I mean, it like when I start running, and I haven't been running lately because I had an injury, but when I start running, like for the first 3 minutes, it just sucks.
It does.
God,
I
it
feel
just
my body
hurts.
hurts. My
Everything, my
joints are like,
calves.
oh.
Oh, it's just awful. And then after about 5 minutes or so, I get into a rhythm and it's better, and it's
Yeah.
better, and it's better. So it's really interesting. The funny thing is I do have a love-hate relationship with exercise. I love it and I love to hate it. And so because of that, I've never stuck with it consistently for more than a few months at a time. And so my goal this year is to actually try and do something for myself exercise-wise every day.
Mm.
Whether it's yoga, whether it's just, stretching, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic. I noticed that when I started focusing on my physical fitness, and working out every single day, that my depression significantly reduced. And I got to the point where, because I was on antidepressants as
Yeah.
well. I came completely off of them. Was able to wean off of them, and haven't had any episodes. I mean, I still feel anxious at times, but I know my signs well enough, and I know my
Sure.
triggers to where I can be like, okay, well, I'm gonna go relax, or I'm gonna go do this. I'm gonna go take a minute. I'm gonna go outside, and it helps significantly.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I think knowing yourself better is so important.
mhm,
And the one thing that happens for me is when I start eating poorly, and that means the things I crave, French fries, potato chips, that kind of stuff. Anything that's like baked in vegetable oil, right? Cooked in vegetable oil, which is so bad for you anyway. When I start eating those things, then what happens is I have a fall off on my motivation and I just don't want to do it.
mhm,
And I've seen this happen a couple of times. I went to California last year around this time. I didn't want to spend another winter in New York, so I just drove my car to stay with my cousin for a couple months in California, and it was great. And I thought I was going to like exercise and stuff, and I got really depressed. And I didn't. And then I did the same thing. I went to England for about 6 weeks, and I did the exact same thing. I ate a bunch of shit, and I didn't exercise. So it really does come down with to how you choose to manage your mind.
yep. Manage your diet, and your diet. You're absolutely right. Your diet has a lot to do with how you're with because your brain actually takes a lot of the nutrients that you're consuming.
Yeah,
It can affect your mind as well. So you're working out, your diet, they're all interconnected. Um,
everything is.
it's not just like, oh well, I don't want to be on a diet because I don't care about being fit or having a six pack. It's not
Yeah.
that's not what it's about.
So,
It's so much
I mean,
more.
I don't like diets. I hate diets actually, and I think diet culture is really awful because of how it's objectified women and how it's turned women into and men too, but mostly women.
Yeah.
And, made us, wanna look like waifs, that kind of thing, right? And so if you don't look like that, you're not, attractive. So there's a lot of problems with diet culture. It's a
Yeah.
$113 billion industry. So I don't like to talk so much about diet culture, but I do like to talk about health.
Mm,
And there's a couple things that we could talk about in terms of vegetable oils that we know soybean, safflower, sunflower, corn, canola, and cottonseed, all the seed oils increase your inflammation. And what I've found is that if I eat foods that are cooked in those or that are made with those, after about a week or so, I do have to deal with depression. And the reason for that is probably because our hormones are made from the fats that we eat. And if you're eating shitty fats, you're going to get shitty hormones.
mm,
And then that affects your brain. And it's all connected.
yeah. And that's a good point.
Yeah.
I've actually gotten it completely away. I haven't had seed oils in a while. I most of the stuff that I cook with is animal fats, butter, just straight butter or olive oil. That's about it.
Nature
Uh,
doesn't make bad fats.
yeah, that's about all the oils that I
Yeah.
utilize. So, and I've noticed a big difference as well. When I did have more seed oils in my body or I was consuming them, inflammation is a big deal. And I noticed that I would like, even though I would be eating low calories or eating healthy, I would still be inflamed. I'd
Yeah.
be like, what's going on? What's
Yeah.
going on? So I started doing some research. I've came across the same exact research about seed oils and staying away from them.
Yeah, I did a couple of podcasts with, Kate Shanahan, who wrote a book called Deep Nutrition, which
Mhm.
is really all about she wrote a couple books, The Fat Burn Fix, but, deep nutrition is probably the Bible of eating, I think. It's really important. I mean, you know, I don't think there's anything wrong with grains. So, I mean, obviously, if you wanna lose weight, you're gonna cut your carbs a little bit. That's just one of the things that works, but you don't have to, right? And so at the end of the day, I just don't care anymore. Like I'm gonna love my body and I'm gonna treat it well, and it's gonna give me what it wants. That's how I've just surrendered to it. So that's power of now thinking right
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
Yeah.
For those of you that haven't read The Power of Now, you need to go read it is a phenomenal book. It's the messages and the information that he puts in there and it comes from so many different aspects of life.
Yeah.
It's it's like transformational. It's
It
really
is.
good.
It is.
When you read it, you're like, it's mind blowing. You're like, man, he's so right.
Yeah, he's very interesting. I mean, he wrote another book called A New Earth, which is also very good. He had like an enlightenment experience. And I've always wanted that, and it's just never happened
Mm.
for whatever reason, you know. But another book that would be a really good one and a good accompaniment to Power of Now would be Untethered Soul.
So I've read The Surrender Experiment.
Yeah, Untethered Soul is
I've heard that title,
yeah,
which that's it's on my reading list. I've got like 8 books in the queue.
yeah,
So
yeah. Untethered Soul is really good. It's really about how to understand how to let go,
yeah,
how to get out of the cave that we create for ourselves.
yeah.
Yeah, it's great.
They actually got me into, so I read the Surrender Experiment, and that got me to be more interested in meditation and
Mhm.
like looking into that and meditative practices, and that led me to the Power of Now.
Yeah.
And so I've been doing more meditation. And what I found is that um, while I too want to have that enlightenment experience, and and it's like maybe one day it'll happen. Who knows? It's
Yeah.
just like you kind of surrender. But I do feel like there's more things that have happened. One of the things that I write down because I started this meditation practice called the Silva method
Oh, yeah.
by Jose Silva.
So
And
are you doing Silva method, or are you doing Mind Valley's version?
I am doing Mind Valley's version.
So
Yeah.
you're doing Vision's version of,
Vision's version.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Have you gone into the metals yet?
I have gotten the medals. I've gone through the whole program.
Okay.
So, but I like how he talks about writing down magic that you've witnessed.
Yeah.
Every
Well,
day
that's a
writing down the magic that you witnessed. And because what I found is that there's more things that have happened where when you're more attuned to it and you're looking for it and you're kind
mhm.
of more present in your day, there's been a lot of magical things that have happened that I'm just like where I wanted something to happen and then an opportunity presented itself.
Yeah, it's really interesting how that works. I mean, it's more than law of attraction. And Silva specifically, I mean, the Silva technique is really interesting because when people take that technique before they're ready, they start to say, well, whatever you see the stories like this thing is there, but
Mhm.
they were off by like 2 feet,
Yeah.
But then when they're really like good Silva practitioners, they can actually tap into like collective consciousness or the universal consciousness and actually make things happen. That that is magic. And that's how you get more magic in your life is by tapping into the actually the other side of your brain,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
There's a great book called The Alphabet versus the Goddess. It's probably the best religious history text I've ever read, which is it wasn't that intention, but before we had written language, all gods were female. And once we started using our left brain for language, all the gods became male and they murdered the female gods. So we lived as a species pretty much in our right intuitive brain before we had written language. And so you can see how the subjugation of women kind of happened through the patriarchy as the patriarchy grew. It's very interesting. Great book.
I'll have to check it out. What's the name of that book one more time?
It's called The Alphabet versus the Goddess.
Yeah. Versus the Goddess. I'm always looking for new books. I read daily. I've been
Yeah.
on a reading kick for the last year and a half.
Oh, I
So
always read. I read every single day.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's phenomenal.
I'm on a James Altucher kick. I'm really, I tweeted at him the other day and he followed me. I was
Oh,
like,
really?
yeah. I was
That's
like, what?
that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've got like 1,500 followers and he's got like 150,000. And he followed me.
That's awesome.
I know, right?
That's a good day.
I know, it's really great. And I texted him and he didn't I said, "I wanna buy you a coffee." And he ignored me, but he's like an introvert, so I'll give him a chance to yeah.
So, with Launch Your Life, this has been actually a great conversation.
Yeah.
I like where this is going. With Launch Your Life, if someone were looking at that, like, or I mean, you have your specific niche. So, kind of talk through the program and like how you help
Yeah.
people in the process.
Actually, the women who are in Launch Your Life now, I mean, it's not just for women, it's for women and men who really wanna kinda create the life of their dreams. We start with like a it's a little workshop on what do you want in life? Like, what does your ideal day look like?
Mm.
And then we go after like how to make that happen. And the people who are in it now are really people who've kind of come through my menopause program more than anything else. So they've just stuck around with me. Um, but my goal is to bring in people who, especially surgeons who want to love every second of their lives, because it's a hard life. And from what I understand in marketing is the more specific your niche, the better it is.
Yes.
So, but I'm open to talking to anybody about this program who is a high achiever, because it really is for high achieving professionals.
Mhm. Well, for anyone that hears this conversation or hears about this program, what's the best way to connect with you to learn more?
Just email me, drg@drmichellgordon.com.
Okay.
Or, I mean, I'm on Twitter and I'm on LinkedIn. So Dr. Michelle Gordon on LinkedIn, and on Twitter, I'm Michelle E. Gordon. So those are a couple places where I'm pretty active. Active on Facebook too, but I don't really respond there. I respond to LinkedIn a lot more.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been actually being more active on LinkedIn within the last week or so.
Yeah.
Trying to focus more on LinkedIn as well.
Yeah, LinkedIn is a really good opportunity to, if you can start to get noticed. I mean, I think I've grown my network by, I want to say, another 80% or so since I started posting. I did like 5 months of posting every day, and things were going really good. And then I got really depressed and stopped. So I can't do that this time. I post every day.
Yeah.
But this
Awesome.
is, I mean, it's the struggle,
Yeah.
and building in public. I'm actually doing this other thing that I'm showing on Facebook, is that I told Chat GPT-4 to help me build an e-com business. And so I'm doing whatever it tells me. I gave it a budget.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So that's on Facebook. On Facebook, I'm DRM Gordon. And I'm just building this in public, and I'm going to post all the prompts and all the responses, and see what happens.
Have you so you just started this?
I did, and then ChatGPT went down in the middle of it today. So
Okay.
I did what it told me. It told me to get a like printable or Printly or something account, and then create an Etsy store, and that's as far as I've gotten.
Okay. Yeah, I've got a
So we'll see.
Printful account.
Yeah,
I've got a Printful account. I haven't created an Etsy store. That's
yeah.
awesome. That's awesome. I'm actually intrigued to see how it
Well,
rolls out.
I'm actually I might tweak it a little bit to use instead. It told me to pick a niche. It gave me a bunch of niches, and it was like mental health quotes, which is great because I can come up with those pretty easily. But I'm also creating some really great art on Midjourney,
Okay.
and so I might just try to sell prints of this beautiful art that all I have to do is put in a prompt, and it
Yeah.
spits out something beautiful for me. It's great.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Well, Dr. Gordon, I appreciate you coming on the podcast and just sharing your experience and a little bit of your wisdom. Last question I have for all my guests
Okay.
is you have the opportunity to sit with, learn from, break bread with three individuals,
Hmm.
anyone in history,
Oh, wow.
alive or deceased. Who would they be and why?
Okay. We'll start with Joan of Arc
Okay.
because
I've heard.
she created a movement, and she was only 14, and she got burned at the stake.
Okay.
So she was a victim of the patriarchy, and I think that that's pretty cool. I want to have Taylor Swift's marketing mind, and the ability to write poetry. So I'd love to pick her brain. Um, in and I mean, I like never even listened to her music before her most recent album,
Mm,
but she does a good job of telling stories. So
yeah.
I would probably want to talk to her. And then, um, you know, if I could, I'd sit down with Hormozy.
He's brilliant.
Yeah, that guy's smart.
But he breaks things down in such a
Yeah,
simple fashion. But the way
yeah.
his mind works and how he explains like how he came to that, it's genius.
Well, I think without Layla, they wouldn't be where they are.
Yeah.
So, she's his integrator. So, I'd love to have a conversation with both of them at some point. And then Cody Sanchez would be my fourth if I had a chance to talk to somebody. Do you know who she is?
No.
Cody Sanchez teaches you how to buy boring businesses and make money off of them, like laundromats and plumbing, service businesses and car washes. She's on
Oh,
YouTube. She's got millions of followers on YouTube, and so she breaks everything down. It's pretty cool.
that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's actually interesting.
I did meet with Justin Welsh and his wife.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I went to their house last year when I was driving across the country. We had some. What did we have? We had a little bit of food, and we just talked and talked. It was fun. They're nice people.
Awesome. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for jumping on the podcast and just sharing all this. This has been fantastic.
Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. This has actually been great. This is one of my favorites. For the audience listening, you know, the best thing that you can do, if you got any value out of this, if you learned anything, if the message that Dr. Gordon shared with you, if it changed your perspective or taught you anything, is just share this content with somebody else that could also get an impact from it. They could also learn, maybe even look into Dr. Gordon's program and start changing their life and being more present and surrendering actually
Yeah.
to the circumstances of their life and not attaching any negative or positive value, but just living in the moment. This has been the Be the Difference podcast. I'm your host, Greg Birch. Until next time, we'll see you.